Hi, my name is Koketso Makhafola, and this is my Quantum Leap story. So a few years ago, back in 2019, I started feeling a tingling sensation on the left half of my face. And, initially I thought maybe it's nothing, so I kind of let it go. But a couple of days later, I went to see my primary care physician, and he couldn't figure out what was wrong. We did an x-ray looked good, and so he referred me to a neurologist. And then when I went to the neurologist, they did a neurological exam and said, hey, everything looks good, but in order to maybe figure out what's happening with this tingling sensation, we're going to do a routine brain MRI, which we do for pretty much everybody that has some sort of tingling sensation, just to rule everything else out. And so they did that. And they told me, we'll get the results in a couple of days and we'll get back to you in about a week or so. But that same afternoon, about 3 hours later, in fact, they called me back and said, hey, you need to come in because we found something. And so I went back and they said, look, we have located a lesion on your brain on the left side, which is in the area that actually explains this tingling sensation. So all signs right now are pointing to multiple sclerosis. And so because we need to figure out what's going on, the first MRI was without contrast. So we're going to do another one with contrast and see if there are not, any other areas of your brain that light up and that show, additional lesions and so forth. And so I did the contrast MRI, and they came back and said, yeah, so this is really pointing to MS. And so we were in a season of prayer and fasting, and I had been praying quite a bit myself. And so I got the diagnosis on a Friday, and so like there was a move of the Spirit in the church that Sunday, and we had an altar call, and so I was prompted to go up and tell the pastors about the report that I got, and they laid hands on me and they prayed for me. And then afterwards, Pastor and Wendy encouraged me to take communion every day. And Pastor Wendy actually gave me a book of healing scriptures and a CD to listen to. Those were from Dr. Kenneth Hagin, to listen to every day as I was taking communion, and with this charge, just to take it with confident expectation of something good coming out of this. And so it was about just a little bit of a 2-week time period before my next sort of medical procedure, where they were going to do now a top-down MRI, brain through spinal cord, the whole nine, spinal tap, because they wanted to look for the markers that show definitively a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. And so in those 2 weeks leading up to the exam, I took communion daily, praying, listening, and reading those healing scriptures. And then I went in, and the doctor they did all of those things, the full MRI of my spinal cord and my brain, with and without contrast. And then they did the lumbar puncture to get the spinal fluid and all of that. After a couple of days, they came back and said, we found nothing. The MRI was clean, the spinal tap was clean. In fact, I remember like it was yesterday, my doctor had a 100-page plus report prepared for me, where she had gone in and highlighted all the things that we're expecting to see, all the markers that we're expecting to see that definitively confirmed a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, and there was nothing. Everything, every scan, every test, all of them came out clean, and I had nothing else that I could say except Jesus worked it out, right? It was that confident and hopeful expectation, taking communion every day, believing. Pastor said this not too long ago, that the healing is available by grace, but we have to have the faith to receive it. And so I believe that with the laying on of hands and the prayer and taking communion every day, I was able to build up the faith needed to receive the healing that was already available, because Peter writes that by Jesus' stripes we were healed. And so I was reminded that healing was already available, and by taking communion daily, that his stripes guaranteed my healing. And so I received it, that was the stamp, right? That says, hey, look, we believed, and Jesus answered that prayer. And so I felt not only, one, relieved, but also vindicated in my faith. It just made my faith experience even stronger, because I felt like with this experience, having walked in the fire with Jesus and then coming out the other side, I had nowhere else to look other than the fact that God did. If you're going through something right now, this is what I would say. It's the season, because it is a season, is a test of your confident expectation in God. To remind ourselves that we don't fight for victory, but we fight from victory, right? Because victory was already declared by the cross, and Jesus won when he took back his life and was raised from the dead. And so we have victory. And so when we're going through things, we ought to remember that we do not fight for victory, but we're fighting from victory. And I think the other thing, and again, I learned this in my own experiences, regardless of the result, God doesn't change, right? And that's the conviction I had, which is why I wasn't too worried about it. Whether I got the good report or the bad report, it didn't change who God was for me. But I still expected, because healing is consistent with God's word and his character, I still expected him to move powerfully in my life. And so I would say to have that confident expectation without being emotionally tied to the result, right? Have the confident expectation in God without being emotionally tied to the result. Because whatever happens, God's will be done. And no matter how we interpret the result, there's something God has in store, and that will bring him glory. So whichever way it looks, ultimately it's for his glory. And he's just, and he's good, and he'll always do and work things out for the good, ultimately.